Hey, welcome to class. So today I am going to take a few moments and just do the foundation colors here on this oak tree. This is 1, 2, 3, what, how many? Oh, that's blue. Oh no. Ah. Anyway, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little oak leaves here. Let's see if I can lift off these little blue spots I just made. Now this is something I highly recommend doing, is when you do a big piece, do studies of the same piece. I want to do the foundation colors, and what that means is I want to lay on some water, and I think I'm going to go ahead and try to do all three at the same time. So this will be a quick little study, and I'll come back to it, who knows when, and I'll put on some more detail and such later. For a beginner, I think it's really important to know how to start. So let's talk about that while I'm doing the painting. How to start your work. So the first thing you want to do is sketch. Unless you're the type of artist that doesn't sketch anything. But if you're that type of artist, then watching my show isn't going to be very helpful. I'm going to use a smaller brush for this. I'm using the Da Vinci Maestro. This is the 1010, which means 10 smaller than 1. Or 0.10, and I want to leave lots of white spaces coming in here in the bottom. Now one of the things that are important in this is that I keep these edges really straight. If my edges are ratty, all kind of broken up and ratty-tatty, which can be hard if you haven't painted in a few days, it's not going to look 3D. Alright, let's just start that again. That was really going over the edge. So I've got my colors. Now I've mixed some, what was this now? Some burnt umber with some raw umber. And I think I'm adding a little bit of permanent olive green in here to make a slightly brown tone. A slightly brownish green tone. Now if you've watched my work before, you'll know that I like to jump around, or what I like to call dance. And that really means just an erratic stippling. Where I'm leaving lots of gaps. And I'm going to go ahead and paint on the darker side. So we're going to imagine that over here we've got a little bit of a highlight. So I'm going to preserve those whites by just not painting on it at all. I want to come around the back side here. And give that some form. And right at the bottom I have a little point. There we go. Now we could come back with a thirsty brush and we could lift this off. But since it's the foundation color, it's the very first layer and it's going to dry lighter, I'm just going to leave it. So up here, this is a twig, and this twig is the same color. Let's start with the bottom, which is going to be a little darker. You going to come hang out in my studio, Tony? Yeah. Hey, buddy. And I'm almost painting it in the same way I would draw it. Now, this part of the branch is going to have little bumps. Now, this is an incredibly tiny branch. Yeah, I would put some yellow in there and add a little bit of sunlight, but for now I just want to get kind of that form. Now, with the cat, of course, that bottom line dried just a little bit, but that's alright, I can just wiggle it around, lift it back up there. So we'll leave that. Let's come over here and add just a feel of form over here on this. And now remember, this part is round, so I'm going in the direction of form, right? So, and I want to leave a little bit of highlight, similar to here. I'm going to leave that highlight in the same place on all of these guys. And then coming down on this side. Breathe out, keep your hand nice and loose. Okay, so we got interrupted because my phone rang. So as you can see, as I drop the color here, it kind of goes, like instantly disperses. So that means I want to wait just a little longer. I do want to put more color in there, but I don't want it to run away on me. So I have to wait until it's just a tad more dry. And then, let's see if I can actually, yeah, like up here. Then I can add that little bit of green line in there. And up here it's completely dry. In order to give a little bit of form with the shadows. It's all about tone. Think about tone. Now, tone, let me just tell you what that is in case you're not sure. Tone means light to dark. And I'm seeing this so often. In fact, I'm going to make a video at some point on this. I see so often that people are doing these beautiful paintings, but they've got no tonal variation. In other words, there's nothing really dark or really light going on. And while it looks amazing, and I know that we're scared, that makes sense, right? It's like, oh no, I don't want to touch it, I don't want to add something dark. What if it doesn't work? What if it looks horrible? But the thing is, no matter what you're doing, unless it's sold, is how I like to think about it anyway, no matter what you're doing, unless it's sold, it's all practice. So just have fun with it. Keep it in the tone of practice, and every piece will be better and better and better. So, you know, if you mess it up, do another one. If you want, you can keep them relatively small, so they're not so complicated, or certainly in the beginning. I mean, you can see these little nuts, acorns, are really tiny, but the overall piece is quite big. The piece is like the size of my hand extended. So I'm already starting with layers, even though this is going to be really, at least my idea. This is just my basic layer here. Okay, and as it dries, again, I want to add more and more dark in here so that I can really darken this outer edge. And isn't that pretty how the green and brown have mixed together? There's like a little green spot in the middle and a little bit down the edge, but then there's a brown here. But it's all blended beautifully because I applied it when it was all still wet. Yeah, that's really good. Alright, let's come to the second one. And let's do the same thing. We're going to add more form. Now, under here is, theoretically anyway, it's going to be our darkest spot. And I'm just going to build it up. I'm not really adding new dark colors. There's no blue in this, for example. If I add a blue to brown, I get an even darker brown. It's just, for now, it's just a mix of, okay, so just a mix of burnt umber and raw umber. And raw umber is really almost a yellowy brown, whereas burnt umber is very dark, dirty brown. Like chocolate. So, and this underlayer here is completely dried. So again, I just want to stipple that on. Almost like hashing. Okay, and now I'm going to draw using the side of the brush. See what that's going to do. Just want to get a little texture. Now this is a really small brush, so there's very little paint on it. But I just want to get a little bit of that texture there. And let's turn it this way. So it's easier for me to do this, and then go in the other direction. I just dried off my brush, so I'm coming back and almost lifting out some of that paint, but also making a little bit of a mess on purpose. There we go. Pretty good. Now let's work on the top a little bit. And this one goes vertical, this one goes horizontal, right? We're working in the direction of form. So I'm just going to draw a few little lines going this way. Now up here the form changes. This is why it's really helpful if you have a subject. But I did do a lot of pictures and studies from the subject, so I kind of have it in my head. And also, originally when I picked it, it was green. Later it browned up. But it was originally green, so that's quite close to how it actually looked. Okay, and then coming back with just some plain water, just want to smooth the color around so that there's not so much white. Yeah, we'll do that over here too. And this one really flattened out, even though we did paint it a little bit in the direction of form, it didn't really hold because it was so wet. nice, a little more burnt umber. It just means taking it from my little palette here and putting it on the other palette. And then this is too wet. It's okay. Now this guy is like the size of 2 pennies. 2 American pennies. Not 2 German pennies. Those are a little bigger. No, those are a little smaller, actually. And not 2 2 British pennies, because those are really big. So 2 American pennies. And here I want to add a little more dark. A line of shadow there, because that's really what's going to set this apart. Actually, it's that little piece there in the corner. And the same here. So I will photograph my original, if I can find it, and I'll put it on Patreon for all my Patreon subscribers. If you guys want to paint along with me, then you can go there. You can download, there'll be a whole bunch of samples, like photos, reference photos that you can download, and you can then work from those reference photos, make your own sketches, and there might even be a sketch. Sometimes I do a little quick sketch that you can download, or I include it in the actual post on Patreon. And then you can come back and watch this either right now, if you want to go do that, because that's, you could do that right off the bat, or if you want to watch this all the way through, then go get it, and then set up all of your stuff and paint with me. Either is a good idea. I personally think it's good to kind of get a feel, like just to watch first. If I'm ever watching anybody, and I do watch people all the time, I tend to watch what they're doing first, and well, I don't tend to take a lot of time to actually paint it, but I do watch it all the way through. Especially if it's something like painting oil, which would be something I don't normally do, and have very little talent when it comes to painting oil. So then, or Lisa Lockery from Lockery Fine Art, for example. I love watching her stuff. She does acrylic, and it's just awesome to see how she can transform something, and I think acrylic is complicated. I know people say that watercolor is by far the hardest. Well, in my opinion, acrylic is the hardest. Oil, not so much, because it stays wet for a long time, and there's some real benefits there. But acrylic, oh boy, I tip my hat to acrylic artists. And you go through a lot more paint, because you can't reconstitute it. Which is something I really like about watercolor. So I've also done this fine line right on the bottom here, and that matches these lines. So let's see if we zoom out here and you guys can see what it actually looks like. I'd say that looks pretty good. Very interesting how my my camera is picking this up incorrectly. Okay, I hope that helps. Okay, so from there, those look really, really good. Now, I would, like I said, this is just my foundation colors. I would go on and put my lines in here later, similar to what's way over here. That one's pretty hard to see because it's really dark, but there's these super fine lines in there, and then a little bit of texture and stippling in the base. So I would do that here to give form going vertically, and then here to give form going horizontally. And I'll do that on both. Now here in the shadow, or in the highlight, I've got it, it's standing up. Now funny enough, there's not a real highlight here, but that's okay because we don't know what's out there. Like maybe there's a leaf that is, another leaf that's shadowing that, or, but not this, you know. So there's other things to consider here. So from this point, one, we could call it done. We could call it done. But I think I'm going to continue. Now, these little guys were green, these little nodes. So we're going to do them. Now, they were green, and I'm going to use some sap green and a little bit of burnt umber. Now, let's think about this. If we go with the same concept that the light is coming from this side, then I would like a tiny highlight over there and most of the dark over here. So let's just paint that backwards. And yes, at this stage, we are kind of filling it in. And no, there's nothing particularly glamorous about filling it in. But it's all the extra layers that we put on later that will really bring it out. You know, for that one, I'm going to imagine it's in the shadow completely. Okay, and then we have them up here too. And I want to make sure I paint little things like this because if I go over it later, it's going to be really hard to find it again because they're so delicate and really tiny, you know. In fact, there's a good chance that one's going to disappear. Now, this, what in the world is going on there? This comes down. That's a node and that's a node. That's the branch here. So this little leaf comes down. Okay, so what I want to do now, what I am doing now, is just blocking in these veins. Because I'm doing them first, they're going to dry. I'm going to get a nice, beautiful, crisp line on them, which is good because that's going to help. It's hard to talk and do a line like that. It's going to help with the form, the believability. And it also helps if I turn, because you can tell every time I turn this, try to figure out how I can turn it so you guys can see it. But then I'm going to have pulling away like that. I have a lot more control by pulling away and lifting my brush up. And any bumps like this is perfectly fine. In fact, I kind of want that because I don't want it to be so perfectly straight. I want those bumps to represent the different bumps and forms and movements within the leaf, because none of these leaves obviously are perfectly straight. So is that all? How many more do we have? That leaf is there, that one's there, this one, and this one. I think that's it. Okay. So, and then coming down here, let's give a little more color to these nodes. Yeah, see that node just got lost in there. Alright, and then I'm gonna just add some water and pull that color. I just want to pull this down into, infinity. Don't want that water drop going back up there. And now if we drop color into there. Okay, and while it's still wet, I'm going to add just a little drop of brown. And this is the same burnt umber. I want to avoid the nodes because they were green. And it's pretty uneven how I'm dropping this in, so like a little dot there and a little dot down here, maybe a line, maybe a little dot, maybe some lines across. Okay, and there we have our very basic and beginner bit here, our foundation layers. So just to recap, I did the whole thing with two colors, right? I used the sap green and the burnt umber and a little bit of raw umber just to kind of warm up the browns. And this is all done the same. This is of course much more watered down. I've got the greens going out into the leaves, so I know where the leaves are, and I finished this tiny little branch. And then with the acorns themselves, we're concentrating on the shadow on the far left side, and here too, and then later I'll come back and I'll do the rest. So that's what I've got so far for today. I just wanted to make this really quick and show you guys how I do my beginning layers for a botanical piece that could be quite complicated later, but maybe it won't be. This is something where I'm going to work on it and just kind of have fun, and I just want to get down these colors, and it's practice. So I may continue, or I may decide to start a whole nother one, and this just becomes practice upon practice upon practice. So for today, I recommend you guys go outside. Your task, your homework for today is to go outside and find whatever you can. If it's something like this, this is a horse, what is it called? A horse nut? Horse chestnut. Get a horse chestnut, or if you want, you could find a peanut, or you could grab any old leaf. But try to get something with a stem, because the stem is really useful. So that's what we've kind of been doing today, is stem. So let's look at this one, for example. Do we see all of these colors, all these lines, all this intricate detail? So go ahead and grab one of these. This is a node, by the way. Grab one of these, bring it inside, and sit down and look at it. Do some sketches, draw it, sketch it, and then think about filling in your sketches with some basic colors. And I promise that something like that, if you really do try, your work is going to improve, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Well, I don't promise it's going to be a lot of fun. I hope it's going to be a lot of fun. For me, certainly it's a lot of fun. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next class. Toodaloo!